Barak Yahweh, Barak Yahweh Shah, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Barak Yadash. All praises, honor, glory, love, respect, faith, and power, and trust, and all credit to my Heavenly Father Yahweh and my Heavenly Big Brother Yahweh Shah. Thank you so much for what you've done, what you're doing, and what you're going to do. Double honor to the apostles and elders and bishops of GMS, Great Millstone, who I learned from, and all the men scattered all over the world, teaching this truth and none but the truth in the name, spirit, and the power of Yahweh by Shema Shah, trying to put a spiritual bug in you Hebrew Israelites' ears, you so-called blacks, Latinos, and Spanish, Native Americans, Seminole Indians, and you speckled birds. And what is a speckled bird? That be a Hebrew Israelite that look like some of the heathen nations, like, for example, a Hebrew Israelite that look like a so-called white person or so-called Chinese person, etc., etc. Got some videos lined up on what's going on and internationally, and most of it is related to America, but not all of it, but somewhat is. But anyway, I'm going to play these videos. I'm going to get into the scripts my best ability to say whatever God say through spirit, power, Yahweh, by Shema, Shah, the Holy Spirit, the Krahak, Dash. Lord willing be, homie, let's get it.
The United Arab Emirates has requested a U.S. financial backstop, effectively a lifeline to support its economy. Clearly, Iran managed to inflict much more damage than reports indicate, and the UAE is now bracing for an economic downturn as its energy infrastructure has been destroyed, severely damaged, and with more escalation on...
Man, wait a minute. They the same folks that were trying to pull away from the dollar, and they were selling oil. I think they were selling oil to China for yuans or yuans, whatever you call them, and not accepting no other currency but the Chinese, whatever, but not the dollar. Anyway.
The horizon, it is clear that the worst may be yet to come. The United Arab Emirates is quietly preparing for a financial contingency as the war with Iran drags on, signaling that the conflict is not just military for the GCC states, it has vast economic consequences for those regional actors that have become effective.
Yeah, that was the GCC. Yeah, that was the dude, what's his name? The whatever his nigga name, Bashim, whatever his name is. He kind of got that Malcolm X vibe. He keep talking about the GCC. I'm like, them niggas are not in control. It's the JEWs, so-called, the baby dick suckers. And oh yeah, speaking of that, on YouTube, them niggas did my last, was a video I did yesterday of me airing them niggas out. Yeah, niggas said hate speech. Hate speech, they won that video, and that's the first video they goddamn flagged, gave me a strike for hate speech. I'm like, get the fuck out of here, you damn faggots. Shit, 'cause they know these niggas are exposed. You can catch that video. What's that video that about them niggas not having that fag parade over in the Dead Sea and Southern Poverty Law Center. What else I was talking about? A whole bunch of shit. Heck yeah. But you can catch that on Odyssey. But on YouTube, they deleted that shit. Fucking bitches.
Co-belligerence. According to a report published by the Wall Street Journal, Emirati officials have begun discussions with the United States about a potential currency swap line, which is a financial mechanism that is typically reserved for times of severe market stress. This type of an arrangement would allow the UAE to access US dollars very quickly and at a much lower cost, effectively serving as a financial lifeline if conditions continue to deteriorate. Now, let me explain very quickly, and I'm sure many of us are not sure what a currency swap line is. So, a currency swap line is a critical tool in the global financial system, and the US dollar still remains dominant in the system despite the fact that its role is declining. So during crises, demand for dollars surges as investors seek safety. And this is one of the reasons why the US dollar actually strengthened after the United States and Israel began their illegal and unprovoked war against Iran. Without sufficient access to dollar liquidity, countries can face currency instability, they can face capital flight and broader financial disruptions. So by raising the possibility of such an arrangement, it is clear that the UAE is now openly signaling that a prolonged war, which appears to be on the table as we speak, could strain its financial system and erode global confidence in its economic stability. In other words, the UAE would not have begun these discussions if it believed that it could withstand a return to war. It goes without saying that the urgency behind these discussions stems from the direct and also indirect impacts of the war. Iranian airstrikes have already damaged parts of the UAE's oil and LNG infrastructure, while the US blockade of the Strait of Hormuz has disrupted oil shipments and caused Iran to close it again. As I'm sure all of us know by now very well, the Strait of Hormuz choke point is one of the most critical energy transit routes in the entire world. Its closure has actually significantly reduced the UAE's ability to export oil, and oil is a key source of dollar revenue for the UAE. So as a result of that, the country faces mounting pressure on both its fiscal position as well as its external accounts. When we discuss these recent developments and their impact on the Gulf states, particularly on the UAE in this instance, it is very important to note that they threaten more than just short-term economic performance. The UAE has made a reputation as a secure global financial hub. It used to attract capital from around the world world, wealthy individuals, global corporations, all flocked to the UAE. But now the UAE is losing those privileges. It's no longer a safe haven, and it's no longer a safe hub for investments, because it has become very clear, I would say it has become crystal clear, that the United States and Israel, its ally, are not interested in peace. They are after dominance.
Never was. Yeah, always been. They never take no rest or fucking taking a break or time out, rest, a nap from war. Shit.
They're after control of resources and also after war, as long as war helps them achieve their goals. So for the UAE and other Gulf states, a prolonged war depletes foreign reserves, discourages investments, and introduces uncertainty, extreme uncertainty, into what has long been viewed as a predictable environment. Once investor confidence begins to weaken, it can be very difficult, if not outright impossible, to restore the confidence. And so because of that loss of confidence, what we have as a result is a deeper impact on the regional economy and on the individual economies of these actors. Despite these concerns, however, it remains to be very unclear if Washington will actually approve such a financial arrangement. The Federal Reserve typically extends swap lines only to major economies, or in situations where financial instability abroad could actually spill over into the United States system. Now, we also know that the United States may choose to make exceptions. For example, Javier Milei of Argentina received a swap line just days before the elections. And so that, of course, gives us an idea that Washington can and does make exceptions in certain situations. So while the UAE is a significant financial center, it is a U.S. ally, it does not currently belong to a very small group of countries with standing swap agreements with the United States. So Washington may not approve it, or it may approve the swap line and do so with certain concessions from the UAE, which I'm sure will be tied into the military realm of the war in one way or another. Now, by the way, the United States has reportedly suspended all funding and security coordination with the Iraqi government and has halted dollar shipments to Iraq's central banking system. And this is according to Saudi channel Al Hadath. Iraq's economy is 90% dependent on its oil revenue that is paid in dollars, and it's paid into a Federal Reserve account in New York City. I'm sure many of you were not aware of this. The United States actually threatened, this was back in January of 2026, the United States threatened to suspend engagement with Iraq's government if any of the 58 pro-Iranian MPs were included in the cabinet. So the United States foreign policy has not really been about democracy, as you can see. I know many of us still believe that. Cutting dollar access actually means that the Iraqi government cannot operate and the state effectively grinds to a halt. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that allows the United States to have tremendous leverage over foreign states. And the US dollar is certainly one of these handy tools that Washington loves to use. Now, the geopolitical dimension is further complicated by the situation on the ground right now. Some Emirati officials reportedly believe that President Trump's decision to go to war to benefit Israel has actually drawn the UAE into the war, and it has already had far-reaching economic consequences on the country. So there are definitely multiple opinions within the UAE, and some of them are very much contrary to what the United States and Israel would probably like to hear. Now, at the same time, what's interesting is that the UAE is not relying solely on the United States. It has already established a roughly $5 billion currency swap line with Bahrain, from what I read. However, of course, such measures may prove insufficient if the conflict intensifies and if it persists for an extended period of time, particularly given the scale of potential disruptions to energy flows in the event of the ceasefire being not extended. But even in the event of a ceasefire extension, which does appear to be highly unlikely, recovery is expected to be very, very slow. Regional officials have warned that logistical disruptions, especially in tanker scheduling and shipping, could continue for months, if not for over a year. And so that suggests that the economic fallout from the conflict will linger well beyond the end of active hostility.
And anyway, the conflict will continue on. And just like 3 days ago, never got to it because I wanted to get into that talking shit about Amalek. But yesterday, I couldn't got into this video yesterday, but anyway, the conflict gonna still continue on to escalate. Like right now, them niggas are already getting ready to go on another attack. And I'm talking about United States and Amalek. United States and Amalek about to get ready to go on an attack with Iran, but I guess I don't know if Iran got any more attacks to do on these other countries in West Asia. All these Arab countries that's allied with United States. And I don't know. Well, whatever.
Hostilities and will likely affect not only the UAE, but the broader Gulf region. Taken together, these developments highlight a critical shift. A conflict that began with military escalation is now evolving into a financial challenge with global implications, with truly global implications. In conclusion, the UAE's outreach for a U.S. financial backstop underscores how rapidly this conflict is spilling into the global economic domain. What began as a regional military escalation is now testing the resilience of one of the world's most prominent financial hubs, and the mere discussion of a currency swap line, that lifeline, signals deep concerns about about liquidity, about investor confidence, and long-term stability of the UAE and multiple regional players. The Gulf's economic model is under pressure. It's clear to see, and Iran has clearly succeeded in showing that it will remain the case as long as the GCC states are co-belligerents.
All right. Next video.
The Iran war energy crisis is worse than the crises of 1973 and 2022 combined, says EU's energy chief Dan Jorgensen. European Union Energy and Housing Commissioner Dan Jorgensen has warned that Europe is staring at years, not just months, but years of elevated energy prices, even in the most optimistic scenario. And this is due to the Iran war continuing to impact global energy markets and the damage across the Gulf infrastructure being critical. Now, even if peace is declared tomorrow, he says, we're facing weeks, months, and even years of difficulties when it comes to energy prices. What's quite ironic is that Jorgensen ruled out any return to Russian energy imports, even in the event of a Ukraine peace deal. So hopefully Europeans are watching this and preparing for higher energy costs, and with that, for higher prices in general for years and years to come, because even though the EU decreased reliance on Russian energy, it has become what many would argue a full vassal of the United States, and with that, fully dependent on American energy. Europe is once again facing a very familiar and very uncomfortable reality, which is another energy crisis and a rapidly growing bill. Since the start of the US and Israel illegal war against Iran, the European Union has spent an additional 24 billion euros, which roughly translates into $28 billion on energy imports. That actually breaks down to more than $500 million every single day. And what makes it worse is that this money hasn't actually bought any extra energy for Europe. It's simply the cost of higher energy in general. It's simply the cost of higher global prices. So this serves as yet another reminder of how exposed Europe remains to external shocks and how fragile its economies are. Qatar Energy, for example, declared force majeure on its contracts last month, and it is still quantifying its losses, while the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz due to the U.S. blockading the strait has stranded much of the Gulf's LNG supply and left Asian buyers outbidding European purchasers for spot cargoes. This situation comes less than 4 years after the 2028 crisis that was triggered by Europe unilaterally cutting off Russian energy. Remember, Russia said that it would supply energy to Europe, and Europe said, well, actually, we don't want this. So Europe actually cut itself off of Russian energy because it wanted to inflict enormous economic harm to Russia. And look what happened. It backfired. Today, the source of disruption is very different, but the vulnerability is the same. The current EU energy crisis is being driven in large part by the instability in the Strait of Hormuz, which is, of course, one of the world's most critical choke points for oil and gas. With flows through this narrow corridor effectively halted due to the blockade by President Trump, global energy markets have reacted very quickly. Prices are rising, volatility is increasing, and uncertainty is spreading across regions, while the possibility of a global depression, we're not talking about a recession, we're talking about a global depression here, the possibility of a global depression continues to mount if the disruption persists. Now, in response, the European Commission has recently unveiled a set of emergency measures that are designed to cushion the economic blow without overreacting. Rather than repeating the sweeping interventions of 2022, such as price caps and windfall taxes, Brussels is now taking a more targeted approach, and that's the official language, targeted approach. Among the key proposals are significant reductions in electricity taxes, potentially dropping them to zero for certain industries, in addition to income support and energy vouchers to help households cope with rising costs. The Commission is also planning to establish a pan-European system to monitor fuel shortages, particularly jet fuel and diesel, and to coordinate emergency responses, including the sharing of supplies between member states. The focus on jet fuel highlights just how fragile certain sectors have become as the result of the EU's own policies. Remember, the EU is not a victim here. The EU chose to cut off a reliable energy source back in 2022, and it chose to completely cut it off by 2027. And now the EU is laying in the bed that it has made for itself. Europe imports roughly 70% of its jet fuel, and industry groups are already warning that shortages could emerge within weeks if disruptions persist. The impact is already visible. Lufthansa has announced plans to cut 20,000 flights through October, citing a doubling in jet fuel prices since the conflict began. A sustained reduction in air travel would actually not only disrupt mobility, but also deal a significant blow to tourism-dependent economies across the continent. Now, beyond aviation, the economic strain is spreading across industries as well. European fishermen, for example, are being forced to hold operations as rising fuel and material costs wipe out their margins. In response, the EU has activated crisis mechanisms to provide direct financial support to those affected, but needless to say, it's not going to be enough to make up for the loss in revenue. Meanwhile, major manufacturers across Europe are passing on higher costs to their consumers because that's how businesses work. They're not going to absorb a hit to their bottom line. They're going to have to deliver to their shareholders, and they're going to, of course, pass on those additional costs to consumers. Companies like BASF, for example, have increased prices on a wide range of products already, from industrial chemicals to household goods, sometimes by more than 30%, according to reports. These increases ripple through supply chains, pushing up costs for businesses and for households as well. The broader economic outlook is also beginning to darken. Already, industry groups warn of declining orders, unprofitable operations, and the growing likelihood of plant shutdowns and job cuts, particularly in energy-intensive sectors like chemicals. Economists caution that if the war continues and energy disruptions deepen, Europe could actually slide into a deep recession. Major institutions have already downgraded growth forecasts for the Eurozone and the United Kingdom too, signaling that the damage is no longer hypothetical, it is already unfolding. It is very, very real, and it is getting worse. If disruptions in global energy flows persist or escalate, particularly through critical routes like the Strait of Hormuz or the Bab el-Mandeb, Europe could face a much sharper supply shock. Europe now stands at a critical crossroads, I would say, with energy costs surging, supply routes under pressure, and long-term alternatives still being very vague. The crisis is no longer temporary, it is structural. Even in the best-case scenario, as I said, years of elevated prices and economic strain appear inevitable, so you should be preparing for that. The EU's strategy may be to buy time, but it certainly cannot eliminate its deep exposure to global energy shocks. And if disruptions persist in key choke points, as appears to be the case right now, the situation could escalate into a far more severe economic downturn. If you are in Europe, I would love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments below. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What is the price of gas right now? We would love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments below your thoughts on this issue. Thank you very much for watching. I certainly
Denmark has officially selected the European SAMP-T-NG air defense system for long-range needs, following the Defense Ministry's statement in September 2025. This marks Denmark's largest defense investment ever, approximately 58 billion kroner, which is $9.1 billion, toward the procurement of a total 8 long and medium-range air defense systems. The SAMP-T-NG selection comes as Copenhagen urgently seeks a system with a rapid delivery timeline, unlike the US-made Patriot air defense systems, which has long wait times. Denmark chose French-Italian missiles over American ones, not because the American system doesn't work, but because Denmark can't actually get it. Amel, I have a PhD in computer science and I use data analysis to spot patterns in geopolitics and economics. What does Denmark actually need here? As of mid-2025, Denmark possesses no operational ground-based surface-to-air missile systems, zero. Its air defense relies on Ivar Huitfeldt-class frigates armed with ESSM and SM-2 missiles, F-16 and F-35 fighter aircraft, and radar surveillance networks. The Air Defense Wing, established at Skolskrup Air Station in March 2025, has not yet yielded any ground-based missile systems. So Denmark currently defends itself by hoping enemy missiles politely fly over water where the Navy can shoot them, or wait until Danish F-35s happen to be airborne. This is not an ideal situation. Lieutenant General Per Pukholm Olsen, director of the Danish MOD Acquisition and Logistics Organization, DALO, justified the decision to discount an order of US-made Patriots, telling reporters last week that delivery timelines are longer for the weapon system. Longer is doing some work in that sentence. Switzerland's Patriot order for 5 systems from 2022, initially slated for delivery between 2026 and 2028, has also been pushed to the right by the US Department of Defense so the department can backfill systems sent by other nations to Kiev. So Switzerland ordered Patriots in 2022, expected delivery was 2026 to 2028, actual delivery sometime after the United States finishes prioritizing Ukraine and the Middle East. The Netherlands rushed through a Patriot order in March to avoid losing its production spot, which the country said could push delivery back to 2033. The Netherlands basically had to sprint to secure a production slot that wouldn't deliver for 7 years. And if we thread together what Denmark actually bought, the European defense industrial base becomes visible. A combination of Norway's Kongsberg-made NA-SAMS, Germany's DL Defense IRST, and MBDA France's VL Mica will deliver the medium-tier capabilities. For long range, they will use SAMP-T-NG, which is basically French for "we built this, so we don't need to ask Washington for permission." Just go look at the actual specs. SAMP-T-NG can engage air-breathing targets at a range of 150 kilometers and at 25 kilometers altitude, and it can track up to 1,000 targets simultaneously. The system has a typical crew of 20 per battery, although once the system is encamped, only 3 people are required to operate it. So 20 people to set it up, 3 to run, the other 17 presumably get coffee. The Astra missile weighs approximately 450 kilograms and measures 4.9 meters in length with a body diameter of 180 millimeters. It's powered by a 2-stage solid propellant motor, offering an operational range in the 150 kilometer class and reaching speeds of up to Mach 4.5. That's fast enough that the missile arrives before the target finishes being surprised. For frameworks on analyzing what procurement decisions reveal versus official statements, my book awaits air surveillance out to 400 kilometers with full 365 azimuth coverage and 90 in elevation. It can track more than 1,000 targets simultaneously and provides track updates at up to 1 Hz in rotating mode and up to 10 Hz in steering mode, so the radar can see 400 kilometers in every direction, track 1,000 things at once, and update 10 times per second when it's really paying attention. The whole system is mobile and can be operational in less than 30 minutes. Deliveries are scheduled to begin in 2028. That's just 2 years from now. Denmark gets on a 150-kilometer range system that tracks 1,000 targets in 2028. The Netherlands rushed to secure Patriots to deliver in 2033. Switzerland ordered back in 2022, still waiting. The math checks out. Once delivered, however, Denmark will become the third operator after France and Italy. Italy received its first SAMP-T entry in January 2026. The first system is expected to enter service with the French Air and Space Force in 2026, 1 year earlier than originally planned. France and Italy are already taking delivery. Denmark joins in 2028.
And one thing, any NATO nation or country that's part of EU or NATO, why would we even buy anything from America? Even let's say they just can't get the weapons from the United States. Why even buy from the United States anyway? Because I mean, why buy from the United States when the United States is pretty much being an asshole towards you? Yeah, I mean, anyway, I just felt like saying that. Because all these nations are already building some kind of hatred towards America. And that's all through the Lord. Because, hey, the Lord, hey, got these nations, was the beast hating the whore? Yeah, these NATO nations or EU, yeah, the EU, they hating America because America being an asshole. And doing shit. And then messing their economy up. Especially attacking countries they get resources from, you know. Energy from, like oil and such. And it's messing up your allies. They attack it. Anyway.
Patriots, check back in 2033. For comprehensive documentation of Europe building systematic infrastructure independence, we've got an entire playlist on European decoupling across finance, energy, and defense. I'm going to link in the description below. And if we zoom out to the structural level, the European Sky Shield Initiative becomes the mechanism. Under the European Sky Shield Initiative, ESSI, air defense systems will be acquired, operated, and maintained jointly by 19 European nations in order to create synergies and reduce...
Oh, yeah, another thing, too. You can't really trust United States damn military equipment, like especially fighter jets, because they got a kill switch. Even the missile launching and all that other technology probably have a kill switch, but it doesn't work. And that's pretty smart to have a kill switch on the products you're selling, just in case your allies turn enemies against you, and you can just turn that shit off immediately when you need to. But anyway.
Procurement costs through higher unit numbers. 19 European countries pulling procurement here. Denmark is the 8th country to adopt the IRIS-T SLM system under ESSI, joining Germany, Estonia, Latvia, Slovenia, Bulgaria, Sweden, and Switzerland. The cost comparison matters as well. A single MIM 104 Patriot battery is priced at around $1 billion, one battery basically. Bulgaria has planned to acquire a minimum of 7 air defense batteries for a combined cost of $1.4 billion. Bulgaria gets 7 batteries for $1.4 billion. One Patriot costs $1 billion, so the cost difference is definitely striking. The production capacity tells the supply story too. Current Patriot battery production is approximately 12 per year. Global demand definitely exceeds supply. That's just 12 batteries annually for the entire planet. PAC-3 MSE missile production is 500 plus missiles in 2024, targeting 650 missiles by 2027. But the key constraint is Boeing seeker availability. Boeing makes the seekers. Boeing's production rate determines global Patriot missile supply. This arrangement works great until every country simultaneously decides that it needs air defense, which is literally happening right now. The United States is now pulling...
Getting ready for World War III. Well, we had World War III, but it's getting more heated.
Components from South Korea and Patriot interceptors from the Indo-Pacific to sustain operations in the Middle East, a relocation that has sharpened an uncomfortable reality for European defense partners. The supply chain they depended on is not actually their own. Let's watch how many more European countries follow Denmark's procurement pattern. Belgium, Croatia, Estonia, Greece, and Romania are evaluating the system as well. Luxembourg is examining the system in the context of potential EU safe funding. Turkey will resume talks with Italy about buying the SAMP-T system, including technology transfer and joint production. Missile maker MBDA plans to double production of the Aster family of air defense missiles in 2026 in response to surging demand. Double production in 2026. European manufacturers scaling to meet European demands. MBDA significantly increased missile production in 2025, with output scaling up fivefold to meet growing demands. I think Denmark will still buy F-35s from the United States at a national level despite transatlantic political uncertainty. Copenhagen has stuck with orders of other U.S. big-ticket items like F-35A fifth-generation fighter jets, even signaling interest in acquiring additional aircraft. The supply chain reality matters more than political realignment.
Hold on, what did it say? Denmark to buy 16 more F-35 fighters after drone flights.
even signaling interest in acquiring additional aircraft. The supply chain reality matters more than political realignment. The United States pulling Patriots from South Korea to send to the Middle East, Switzerland's 2022 order delayed indefinitely, Netherlands rushing to secure a 2033 delivery slot. Denmark looked at that whole situation and basically concluded we need air defense right now, not whenever Washington finishes prioritizing other conflicts. Sweden is procuring IRIS-T SLM, Denmark chose SAMP-TNG, Norway's Nordic neighbors have all made their choices, every Nordic country picking European systems basically. Norway's 2025-2036 long-term defense plan allocates 600 billion Norwegian kroner over the next 12 years, explicitly identifying long-range air defense as one of the highest priorities. Norway hasn't decided yet. Every neighbor bought European. The pattern is visible, isn't it? Ukraine expects to receive SAMP-TNG systems this year and will start testing it against ballistic missiles, Zelensky said back in March. Ukraine getting European systems before some European NATO members. French President Emmanuel Macron's view is that the system should be deployed first in Ukraine. France is building systems, sending first units to Ukraine, then equipping French forces. That's confidence in the product, basically. Denmark spent $9.1 billion on air defense, chose European systems, gets delivery in 2028. The alternative was American systems with uncertain delivery dates extending past 2030. The decision isn't complicated. When you need air defense and one supplier can deliver in 2 years while another supplier might deliver in 7 years if you're lucky, and their production isn't redirected to other conflicts first, you buy from the...
Yeah, and they're like, y'all not first priority. Israel is.
Supplier who can actually deliver. Europe can't control whether the United States prioritizes Middle East conflicts.
Alright, let's get to the next one.
YouTube Premium is ad-free YouTube and the YouTube Music app all together.
Let me get a scripture, because... Hold on, let me see. What is this about? Oh, shit, my wrist acting up. Damn, I'm getting old. I hate this shit. Let me see what I got. Showing you signs, man. And a lot of you Israelites don't see it clearly, man. We in the last days, and World War III is happening, and it's going to happen more. What I mean by happen more things, more fighting and such. Joel chapter 3 verse 9. Proclaim ye among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat their plowshares into swords and their pruning hooks into spears, let the weak say I'm strong. Instead of going to America, these other nations, especially these allied nations of America, going to other countries, buying weapons. Yep. And they need to beef up their military, and in this missile air defense. Yep. They ain't flocking to America.
NATO reportedly just awarded a €6 billion contract to replace its surveillance planes, and for the first time in 40 years, Boeing didn't get it. Saab's Global I-1, according...
Another rejection from the Allies trying to buy shit from America.
to La Lettre. We're talking a Swedish radar on a Canadian business jet. The kicker is that NATO originally picked Boeing 18 months ago, but then America pulled out of its own Boeing order, and now Europe has gone Nordic. Amel, I have a PhD in computer science, and I use data analysis to spot patterns in geopolitics and economics. Here's what makes this genuinely absurd. NATO operates 14 Boeing 707s as its airborne radar fleet, delivered between 1982 and 1992, average age about 40 years. These are not museum pieces, they're Alliance's primary early warning systems, scanning airspace across Central Europe every single day, and they're so loud that the Dutch Ministry of Defense cited noise pollution as one of the reasons they need replacing. 40-year-old jets causing noise complaints at a German airbase is apparently now a strategic defense priority. NATO has been planning the replacement for years for many different reasons, not just noise. In November 2023, they selected Boeing's E-7 Wedgetail, no competitive tender, just a direct award. It kind of makes sense on paper. Boeing built every NATO AWACS since 1988. The E-7 uses 737 airframe with modern radar. Australia, South Korea, Turkey all operate them. Seemed like the safe choice. Then in June 2025, the US Air Force cancelled its own E-7 order, not delayed, just completely flat-out cancelled. The official line was that they're pivoting to space-based surveillance and keeping their existing E-2 Hawkeye fleet instead. In normal words, Boeing's Wedgetail lost its anchor customer. Without the US buying dozens of planes, NATO's 6 aircraft order suddenly looked expensive and unsupported. By November 2025, the whole thing kind of collapsed. 7 European NATO countries, that would be Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Luxembourg.
Oh, well, that's Boeing. Okay, well...
Norway, Romania, and
still America, though.
US were splitting the bill. When America walked away, the financial foundation kind of evaporated. Dutch State Secretary for Defense, whose name I've butchered previously, Guy Stuynman, so sorry, put it plainly very well. The US withdrawal also demonstrated the importance of investing as much as possible in European industry. There is no subtext, no reading between the lines. That is the on-the-record justification from a NATO defense ministry. If you've worked inside procurement systems, you recognize what just happened here. NATO handed Boeing a sole source contract based on incumbency and US participation. The US then bailed on its own defense contractor, leaving European allies holding a suddenly uneconomical deal with a company their largest partner just rejected. The consortium cancelled in November, and 4 months later, La Lettre reports they've gone with Saab. Here's where it gets specific. Saab's Global Eye costs roughly 550 million euros per aircraft. NATO's ordering 10 to 12 planes, total deal between 5 and 6 billion euros. The platform uses Saab's Area Eye extended range radar mounted on a Bombardier Global 6000 business jet. Detection range exceeds 550 kilometers for air, sea, and ground targets. The radar is a fixed plank on top of the fuselage, no rotating dome like the old Boeing 707s, which means faster target tracking but requires specific flight patterns to cover blind spots fore and aft. Now compare that to what NATO almost bought. Boeing's E-7 uses a 737 airframe, which is bigger, heavier, more fuel-hungry than a business jet. The wedge-tail's been in development since the early 2000s, with Australia as the lead customer. It works, but it's also a large commercial aircraft conversion requiring extensive ground support infrastructure. The Global Eye is already operational. UAE has had 5 since 2020, Sweden ordered 3, France signed for 2 with options for 2 more. Production line is live, expert customers exist, logistics are already proven. If you're thinking about critical thinking in complex systems, how to separate signal from noise when institutions give you contradictory information, this is a perfect case study. My book, Awake the Practice of Critical Thinking in an Age of Stress chapter. These 14 E3s are scheduled to retire by 2035. They're based at Geilenkirchen, Germany, and they've been flying missions over Eastern Europe, the Baltics, the Mediterranean, anywhere NATO needs persistent airborne radar.
I'm gonna start right there. Go, okay, they pretty much don't have nothing to do with this Boeing. Let's see what this is about. Redacted.
I want to tell you a story about a refinery in Rajasthan, India, on April 20th, just one day before Prime Minister Modi was supposed to inaugurate it. An explosion ripped through the very heart of this refinery. It happened in the crude distillation unit, literally the most important part of the refinery. And said there might have been a hydrocarbon leak that caused the explosion, maybe. They're not sure. Maybe that's exactly what it was. Maybe it wasn't. But if you stop there, then of course you're missing the bigger story.
Was this recent? I guess so. It says, why are they destroying oil refineries around the world? Well, to create a energy crisis. Yeah, that's all I can see it. And you know, it should be perfect. There's more crisis besides this building up. It ultimately gonna lead to that chip implant.
Story, which is why are so many oil refineries suddenly exploding around the world? I mean, here at Redacted, we don't believe in coincidences at all, just like the 15 NASA scientists, anti-gravity researchers, UFO
they all dead and shit.
gatekeepers who are all now missing or dead, suicided or murdered in the past few months. Something is not adding up. So because Rajasthan, India, their plant was not alone, not even close. In just a space...
You know what? Since he brought that up, let me go and add that video in, because I got nowhere else to put this. Yeah, there's a bunch of well, shit, I can't move it yet, but I'll have to move it later. Hopefully I'll remember.
Of a few weeks since Israel's war with Iran broke out, refinery and oil site fires have erupted across multiple countries, almost too many to capture and count. Texas, Australia, India, Mexico, Ecuador, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, Russia. Now, some were accidents, to be sure, or at least we're told, maybe to save face. Some were verifiably proven attacks. Some are still unresolved, meaning more attacks were, more attacks might have been more attacks or more accidents, we don't exactly know. But all of them have one thing in common. These are the places that turn crude oil into the fuel that keeps us alive and keeps food flowing. It keeps us from slipping into famine. And all of them have this in common. Most people have been focused right now on the tankers in the Straits of Hormuz, of course, carrying the oil and natural gas to destinations all around the world. But what if you take that out of the equation and you neutralize the refineries at the start where the raw crude becomes diesel for trucks, where the raw fuel becomes jet fuel for airplanes and becomes gasoline for millions of people and petrol? Then the tankers are an ancillary part of the story going through the Strait of Hormuz. But let's go a layer deeper here and look at more of these. Let's look at more of these suspicious explosions. Easy for me to say. Here's Saudi Arabia. The Ras Tanura oil refinery was hit by drone strikes and is the kingdom's largest refinery. It shut down after the attacks, after this devastation, and as a precaution so it wouldn't spread. Then you have Kuwait here on your screen, closest part of the Mina Al Ahmadi refinery. And then here on your screen right now is the UAE, the Ruwais refinery. That was hit and shut down as well on April 8th. Iran's own Lavan refinery was struck in what Iranian authorities themselves called an enemy attack. And then, of course, here's Russia. Take a look at this. Russia, Ukraine. Ukraine has been pounding refinery infrastructure openly and repeatedly, hitting 4 sites like Norsy, the Nova Ulfnevsk.
Look at all that damn pollution, bruh. God dang, can't wait to get these niggas out of power. The Lord get these niggas out of power. The earth would be a lot cleaner. The air, man.
plant.
Fucking heathens.
Those are two sites that I can pronounce. The other two I'm not going to even try to pronounce because it's like a whole bunch of consonants just shoved together. I don't even think there's a vowel in here. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Novokubayevsk. Anyway.
That's not for us.
That's not
not for our accents to try.
I don't have that ability. Taups, I think I could pronounce that one. So that's Taups is the number 4 that was attacked in Russia. These attacks were, by the way, carried out by the British. Redacted has learned through our own sources that the UK is providing targeting, telemetry data, as well as munitions to carry out these attacks against Russian oil infrastructure. It's not Ukraine. This was the UK. And it's a war aimed straight at the energy system. But then, what about all of the attacks outside of like a direct war zone? Ukraine, Russia, Iran, UAE, and the Middle East. Port Arthur, Texas. A major explosion.
This is like when you need this energy to run, you know, your new world order. But, you know, yeah, whatever.
Refinery there. Now, Iranian Republican Guard channels have taken credit for this. Said it was sabotage by Iran. We don't have any proof of that, but that's what some Iranian-backed or IRGC-backed channels have said. It was sabotage carried out by them. Who knows? Tit for tat, perhaps? Then here's Australia. The Geelong plant. This was a big one. Caused widespread panic across the country. A blaze of one of 2 operating refineries in the country, knocking out production down and forcing Canberra to scramble for supply. 10% of all of the supply flowed through here. And then, of course, you saw the news announce in Australia that many of these petrol stations had run out of gas. We showed you video of the bags or tags hanging over all of those gas pumps saying, sorry, we're out, we have nothing. Then just days ago in Romania, the CET Vest power plant exploded. That's Romania. And then just 2 days after Romania, Erbil, Iraq went up in flames. So here is Iraq. And the Erbil refinery going up in flames.
Well, anyway, at least Satan shouldn't get an advantage of us, for we're not ignorant of his devices. Pretty much, we see how this is going. And, yeah, they've been talking a whole lot about energy, the energy crisis. I guess I'll take that video about the scientists vanishing. Well, hell, I'm almost done with this video. Let me see, what is this about? Well, you know what? No, I ain't gonna play it. Because a lot of this is pretty much related to war. I ain't gonna play that scientist, the one with the scientist dying of the vanishing mysteriously. But yeah, a lot of these videos is based on war. Anyway, let me see what else we got. Well, not really. Well, the first one and the second video, not so much, but shit, I'll just keep it like this. And I'm 30 minutes in done. Let's get to the next one. Yeah, but energy crisis is coming. Even man-made or whatever, it's all the work of Yahweh Shema Shah. So seek the Lord, Yahweh Shema Shah, and repent. Pray the Lord have mercy on you.
All right, guys, some updated information here in regards to what's going on with Iran. It's always some back and forth, and it seems the Trump administration likes to smokescreen everybody, and just the next day, they could go the other way. Now they're talking possibly an extended 3 to 5 days here for a ceasefire. A lot of information floating around about a week or more. That's being denied. They're saying 3 to 5 days at the most, and they're saying that Iran is just using this time to reorganize, which is what Iran could say about the U.S. and Israel as well, because that's what they've done the past couple times there's been a ceasefire. And then they started bombing them again. It's been a minute. We've had no missiles really flying hardcore. I do feel that if it picks back up, it's going to be harder than what we've ever seen yet. We have our 3rd aircraft carrier in the area now. The George W. Bush has entered the vicinity. And they are saying that the Hormuz Strait here is getting laced with explosives, with mines, today, right now, still. And that does not show that there's any peace, even though there's talk of people meeting up in Pakistan for these talks. Iran is rejecting that they remove their leader for some hardline type individual, and they're downplaying everything the West says. They're not backing down at all. And here Trump is saying, shoot to kill. See, Trump and his administration, his military, are the ones that are holding up this blockade at this point. They're the ones that formed it. And they are firing on vessels that try to penetrate it and get through. So this is all being held up and done by Trump for whatever strategic reason they have here to do this. And in the meantime, the prices globally are rising. I'm telling you, that's what this is all about. In the end, it's a reset of all this stuff globally, and it's begun. And again, 2 weeks it'll be over, just like lockdowns. They're dragging it out, a carrot on a stick. I would be aware that the military is built up and ready to drop bombs, and with this shoot-to-kill order by Donald Trump, I see this going bigger than it's ever gone yet in the next wave of attacks, unfortunately. So that is the latest. Join me for the live stream tonight, going live 8 p.m. Eastern, talking about this and a whole lot more.
Now, amid growing regional tensions, China is conducting military drills, including live-fire exercises in waters east of the Philippines. The drills have been announced at a time when the United States and the Philippines are also hosting annual drills in regions near South China Sea and Taiwan. According to the Chinese military's Southern Theater Command, its Naval Task Group 107 carried out activities that focused on live-fire shooting, sea-air coordination, and rapid maneuvers to test integrated joint combat capabilities. The military drills have been conducted in the waters east of the Philippine Luzon Island, which is close to the Spratly Islands, a site of frequent maritime clashes. While China conducts drills, over 17,000 troops from the US, the Philippines and allies have already been conducting their annual Balikatan military exercises, with combat troops from Japan joining for the first time amid persistent strains between Tokyo and Beijing. Philippines' Luzon Island is included in the Balikatan joint combat drills as well, which runs from 20th of April to 8th of May. The Philippines and US are holding the drills as tensions simmer over Taiwan in the region. Taiwan's government rejects China's sovereignty claims, saying only the island's people can decide their future. With China's assertiveness steadily increased in the South China Sea over the years, territorial confrontations have spiked between Chinese and Filipino forces as well. The Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan all assert territorial claims in the South China Sea, which is a key global trade route.
Yeah, trying to find some more videos. I think that's about it. So Iran threatens to invade Dubai. What? Go right ahead then. Shoot. Well, I think that's it, man. I don't even have any other scriptures. Let me see. What is it? Trump just handed the surveillance state control for your food. I need to get that. I ain't gonna play it. I'm gonna play that for something else. Enough of lying. This is insane. Trump crushes at 8. NATO ending Pentagon email leak. Whatever. Yeah, I think I'm finished. Well, that's all the news I got for this video. But seek Yahweh Shema Shah by seeking his prophets and take heed what to say and try to build a spiritual mental relationship with Yahweh Shema Shah by praying Yahweh Shema Shah, praising Yahweh Shema Shah, worshiping Yahweh Shema Shah, fearing Yahweh Shema Shah, and repenting to Yahweh Shema Shah. To all the men out there pushing this truth and nothing but the truth in the name, spirit, the power, Yahweh Shema Shah, keep on preaching, keep on teaching, keep your faith and trust strong, Yahweh Shema Shah, and stay humble. And for you few sisters out there taking heed, keep your faith and trust strong, Yahweh Shema Shah. Stay humble, stay in order with your man. If you ain't got no man, stay in order, Yahweh Shema Shah. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect and all praises to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. Shalom.